Hello, everybody. My name is Bennett Tchaikovsky. I'm the accounting professor, and today we're going to talk about being a CPA in the state of Washington versus being a CPA in California. My disclaimer and copyright notice: the information and opinions of this presentation are those of myself and not my employers or affiliated organizations, including but not limited to Irvine Valley College and the South Orange County Community College District. Presentation is for educational purposes only and does not constitute any legal or accounting advice whatsoever. Presentation is copyright 2024 by Bennett Tchaikovsky. All rights are reserved. Any distribution is strictly prohibited. So this is a great question from a subscriber that I don't think they were expecting me to do a video from it, but I didn't want to write out an email because this would be way too long. So got a student who's currently a subscriber, currently residing in Vancouver, Canada, beautiful place, and they are pursuing their US CPA designation. They have successfully passed 2 out of the 4 required exams. Congratulations. It's a huge achievement. Initially, I chose Washington State for my CPA jurisdiction. However, I'm now contemplating transferring my jurisdiction to California. Given your experience and expertise in this field, I would greatly appreciate your advice on the following: opportunities and pay. How do the job opportunities and salary prospects for CPAs compare between Washington State and California? The answer to that question is I don't know. However, what I will say is that we are still experiencing a pretty huge CPA shortage in California and across the US. And so the fact that you are a CMA and you're studying for an MBA, that's great. But the CPA license is something that is very, very special, because if you hold it, it means you went through the torture of taking accounting classes, you passed the CPA exam, you did a year of work experience under a licensed CPA. And so it's pretty meaningful. And as far as, growth and compensation in California, and this is actually really important, is because I actually was looking at the last question, particularly for someone who's based in Vancouver. If you are working out of state and you're just kind of coming in to get the work benefit out of the place, I really don't think you're going to get all of the work benefit by being remote. There is something really for being said for actually being there physically in person. So I'm just going to kind of assume that you're planning on either relocating to California or to Washington. But what I will share with you is just some basic stuff. Taxes. Okay, if you're going to in Washington, and I'm really talking about Seattle, because Washington, if you go to Spokane, very, very different place than Seattle. Yeah, and those that are locals know exactly what I'm talking about. There is a very Republican part of Washington, and there is a very Democratic part of Washington. And that's all I need to say. So you've got zero taxes. And in California, you have one of the most heavily taxed states, right? Income taxes, gas tax. Washington has the gas tax too. But in terms of being business friendly, California, that's a tough one. Weather. So in the words of one of my nieces, she is absolutely miserable between, I think it's like January and March or December and March, because it gets light at 9 a.m. and it gets dark at 4. And if you're in school that entire time, it's pretty awful. I really have never seen, when she was coming down on for college visits in Southern California, I've never seen somebody who's been really, really that excited. She was really excited. I think was even more excited, though, as I convinced her not to go to a UC, which was actually a good call. Because why, if you're going to pay that amount of money as an out-of-state tuition to go to a California UC or Cal State, you want to have personalized attention, which you're not going to get out of going to a UC or Cal State. So California, the weather around year-round is generally very, very beautiful. Knock on wood. It's great here. Cost of living in Washington, and again, this depends on where you're living, very, very high. California, it is also one of the highest around. It is very, very expensive to live here. I've had students who have relocated to Texas and South Carolina. A lot of that is due to the cost of starting up a business and also with regards to housing. What's interesting is that in one of my classes, I actually had students prepare a business startup, and their conclusion was, oh, well, we're not going to open up this business in California. So if in that case, for them, it was the right decision. I think that the bigger question of going back to here in terms of where you want to live, it's really about your career contacts and connections. And I would say this, that you want to be living in a place where you're going to be interacting with as many different people as you possibly can. Remote work is great, I think, at a certain point in your life, but when you're first starting out on your professional career, it's probably not the thing to do is to be remote. You want to be living in a place where you're going to have your family, you're going to be a part of the community. And being a part of the community is doing things like I moved to Huntington Beach, got involved with like Little League Baseball, really tried to do a lot of volunteering. And it's really, those are the kinds of, and obviously now that I'm teaching, but when you're first starting out, when you're looking at Washington, Washington has some of the largest tech firms that are up there. California, though, also has a ton of different startup companies that will start up here. So there's really, it's kind of like, it's really kind of up to you. In terms of the other thing you have to think about is that if you do start a family, is that there's certain places in California. So I live in Orange County. We have a pretty amazing school system. I teach in Irvine. That school system is crazy. I mean, that's like private school plus, right? So those are public schools. Those places, I mean, the students I get that come into my classes are amazing. So all I can say is that when you're choosing a place, there's a lot of different factors. It's like, okay, housing, if I'm spending more on a house, are the schools better? What are going to be who am I being surrounded by? And, when you're getting your MBA in Canada, I would actually say that you might just be better off staying up in Canada and doing, getting your license, maybe getting a CPA license here, but, doing work out of Canada, because if that's where all your contacts have been, that might be the best place to go. Now, I do know that wages in Vancouver, I think, are less than in the States. So possibly in Washington is very close to Vancouver. So Washington or Seattle may be the better way to go. But you really need to look at all those different parts. And my niece would tell you the weather. So now let's go to the real other. And again, the long-term benefits, it's real, like this is something that's really important. You can have all these degrees, right? Like, so I'm a CPA and I'm an attorney, but it's about how you choose to use them. I know some extremely successful attorneys and accountants that were not the very top of their class. I'm more educated than some friends of mine, but they are incredibly successful. It doesn't matter. It depends on what you're trying to go through. And it really just, again, it really depends on what you do with your degree. And I always tell my students this, it's about your hustle. It's not about, it's like, you can go get a degree, but if you don't have that drive, if you don't have that hustle, it's nothing's going to happen. Because guess what? If you're working in an accounting firm, and I had a student that I spoke with recently, and he's doing okay, but he's been working in public accounting now for about 4 years. And at that point in time, you really want to kind of be saying to yourself, is like, well, wait a second. I should be a manager by this point, because when you're working in public accounting, ultimately you want to become a partner, because if I'm going to go through that misery of working for a public accounting firm, it's miserable. 85% of the people leave after 2 or 3 years. I want to become a partner. So that's just something, again, to kind of really kind of think about between those two. So in answering questions 1 and 3, I really think that it's what you make of it and the contacts you have there already. If you have family in California, that can make a huge difference. Now, let's go to the licensing requirements. In California, we probably have, by the way, if you are a Canadian citizen, you're going to have to get, and I'm sure you did this for Seattle or for Washington, but you had to go through and get you had to get your degrees translated. So coming over here, so these are the different translation services in California. But if you got your degree outside of the US, you have to get your degree translated. The fact that you've already passed 2 of the 4 parts of the exam, it means you've already gone through and done that. By the way, if you do want to send me over, this goes for anybody. If you want to send me an email to IVC30, IVC30 to CPA@gmail.com, I'll put that at the very, very end so you can contact me. California, to sit for the exam, 24 accounting, 24 business. Incredibly, and it doesn't matter if it's upper or lower division. Very, very open. To become licensed, you need a total to sit. It's a bachelor's with these 2 done. To become licensed, you need 150, which is basically another 20 of accounting study and another 10 of ethics studies. So to become licensed as a California CPA, this is what you need to basically have done. Basically 20 semester units of accounting study, 10 semester units of ethics studies. And that's to become licensed. When you're applying to sit, all they care is these 2 right over here. So if you're going to Washington, right, when we're looking at the educational requirements in Washington, here is the big difference. To sit for the exam, it's still the 24 and 24. However, of the 24, 15 must be at an upper level or graduate level with the upper level course is defined as a course that frequently carries a completion of a lower level course as a prerequisite. So I have not gone through and done a deep dive on this. And if you guys want me to, I can. But what would concern me is that you're going to have to get a bachelor's and an accounting major or concentration. If a concentration is defined as like, okay, 24 semester hours with 15 being requiring prerequisites, okay, that's fine, because a lot of times students cannot be accounting majors at the schools that they're going through attending for a variety of reasons. Then to become licensed, at least 150, and it's basically a repeat of the same thing. So there's no other requirements basically to be on these 24, at least when I'm reading from right over here. Again, I could be wrong. So, but when I look at California, again, this is the bigger difference. Now, if you were a business major, by the way, if you got your MBA, all those business classes will count in this area here. More than likely, you've completed all the ones down over here for ethics studies. So that's really in terms of becoming licensed. Now, here's the other big difference between California and Washington. In California, all you have to do is a year of work experience. So in California, requirements are 1, to become licensed, which is different than sitting. But to become licensed, I need 150, year of work experience, pass the CPA exam. And then they're changing the requirement on the PEF. For Washington, I'm assuming it's the 150, pass the CPA exam, and then you also need a year of work experience. When I look over here, though, at the work experience in California, the general experience as opposed to the attest experience is very, very vague. So the general experience is very broad. In Washington, right, basically, to do this experience affidavit, let's see what this looks like. Type of experience. So I would basically go through over here, put the organizations where I've worked, how many hours, basically a year of experience, and then employment experience must occur in a work environment that provides the opportunity to do this, and then competencies, met all 6 requirements. So this is a little bit different than someone who is going through and doing auditing. And so in Washington, I would say that in terms of getting your general experience, You could probably meet most of these requirements over here, but you would want to have a conversation with your employer prior to doing so, just to make sure that the employer or whoever it is you're supervising you can basically go through and verify everything. It is extremely important that you have these conversations with the CPA before you go through and ask them to sign off on your experience. You want to talk to them. You want to say, hey, are you willing to do this? Very, very important to do. So again, that's really what I would kind of share with you when it comes to this. Okay. So, and now if I am going through, and I will leave this link below over here. I'll put this link in the video. But when I'm coming over here as a licensure applicant, I'm going to apply for CPA licensure. And if I look at these requirements over here, this is in the California Board of Accountancy. And so I've passed the CPA exam in California. That's not you. I passed the CPA exam as a candidate of the state of California, and it's not going to be you. I've been issued a valid license to practice public accounting in a state other than California. Yes. Did you pass the exam as a California candidate? No. Let's go ahead and see next. Okay, so your personal information, you would be putting this down over here, military status, refugees, any dish ever applied. Okay, please list the states you were issued. And so that would basically be, you would say like Washington, if you held an axe. Okay, so then the next, if I said no, what does it do? Okay, next would be the education. So you'd have to go out here, like list out your education. They're going to basically make sure you've got the 150 experience. You would say if you're applying with general accounting experience, go ahead and list them out below. If you submitted the experience form, and then basically certified true statement, and then basically paying the license fee. Right. So I pay the license fee. And there you go. It's going to be an application processing fee of $250. And then I think once you get licensed, you have to pay another fee, but that's pretty much what it would be go through and be. So I'll put those below. So you asked a great question. The one thing that is great about our state of California is that we are very, in terms of our requirements, in my opinion, they're extremely clear, although I seem to be learning more about them every single day. But I'm wishing you the absolute best of luck in your pursuit. Congratulations on passing 2 of the 4 parts of the exam. Please let me know when you pass the other 2. And just before we go, so if you would like me to map out your classes for California requirements, please feel free to send me an email to ibc30tocpa@gmail.com. What I'll do is I'll create a Google sheet that is individualized for you. I'll send that over to you with telling you the courses you need to go through and complete. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and I look forward to seeing you on future videos. Have a great day.